Thank you very much, Ellen. Thank you, Governor Huntsman, and thanks very, very much to everybody from the Atlantic Council and also for NDIA for joining together to partner and make this event possible. And thank you so much for inviting me in particular. Also, just a quick shout out. I know that we have a virtual audience who is with us today. So for those of you who are watching via the live stream, thanks for joining us as well. In just a few weeks, President Obama will be releasing his budget, our budget, to Capitol Hill. And we in the Department of Defense are hopeful that we will be funded above the sequester level. But no matter how the Air Force is funded, it's clear to me that one of our key mandates must be to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and to make sure that we spend those dollars in the best fashion possible. In fact, to use my phraseology, we need to make every dollar count. It is one of my top 3 priorities. I hammer home on it all the time in a variety of ways and what making every dollar count means to me. But the fact is, no matter what we have done to date, we have to do more. We simply have to stop spending more and more of our precious dollars in order to get less and less of an output. Now, for those of you who have been tracking on defense issues for a good many years, as have I, you may recall back in 1986, Norm Augustine cautioned that by the year 2054, the entire defense budget would purchase a single aircraft alone, if the costs continue to go up, 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 as they had been going at that point. Well, that might sound like a crazy statistic, but clearly we can't let it happen. And the point is, we have got to stop spending more and more in order to get less and less. So what we have to do is we have to bend that cost curve. The curve currently goes like this. We need to bend it so that the costs start coming down, down, down. And indeed, this is going to be a key topic of discussion for me this afternoon. I also want to talk to you about something else that I'm pretty passionate about, and that's about how we need to speed up all things acquisition. Because today, we in the Air Force, and I think I can say this broadly across the Department of Defense as well, we are simply too slow in all that we do. So let me just throw out one sort of horrifying factoid for all of you to consider. We currently average 17 months to award a contract in situations where we know there's only one supplier. So this is a sole source environment, and it currently takes us, on average, 17 months to make an award. And I say that is simply too long. We also have great difficulty adapting in the Air Force to new technologies, rolling new technologies into existing systems and acquiring new technologies, even though our future, in large part, depends on acquiring such technologies in order that we keep our technological edge vis-a-vis our potential adversaries. So now, some of you may recall that this past summer, General Welsh and I released a new strategic framework document entitled A Call to the Future, in which we talked about the need to institutionalize a concept that we coined as strategic agility. Strategic agility means we need to be more flexible, more adaptable, more responsive, and we have to speed it up, be quick in all that we do. And when I say all that we do, I mean everything from the recruitment and the development and the management and the training of our people to how we develop and purchase our equipment and our weapon systems. Specifically, strategic agility, when applied to the world of acquisitions, should, if we do it right, not only help us bend that cost curve, but it should also help us stay ahead of our adversaries and counter some of that tremendous uncertainty that we're feeling in the world, because we'll be able to move more quickly and better take advantage of some of that cutting-edge technology. Now, Frank Kendall's Better Buying Power and Secretary Hagel's Defense Innovation Initiative, which of course is overseen by our deputy, Bob Work, are in whole or in part targeted at these basic same goals. And again, those goals that we're all shooting for is reducing our costs, moving more quickly, and improving our technological edge. In the Air Force, we are trying to be very complementary to these umbrella OSD initiatives, and our attack plan is what we call bending the cost curve. Now, you might ask, okay, you've got a bending the cost curve initiative. How is that really different from the Better Buying Power initiative? And that's a fair question. And my answer is this. Unlike the better buying power, which is a broader set of practices and techniques for the workforce to employ, our Bending the Cost Curve initiative is a targeted initiative, which is designed to encourage innovation and active industry partnerships to improve the way that we procure our systems and to drive down costs. So the bottom line to all of this, and Ellen is a great straight man, she's teed me up very well on all of this, is that I personally have been very focused on this whole area since I became the secretary, and I am not alone in this endeavor. General Welsh is all in the effort. He has been very instrumental. And as Ellen already mentioned, we have several of our key leaders that are right here in the audience today who have been driving this train. And again, Dr. Bill LaPlante, who is our Air Force Acquisition Executive, and Janet Wolfenbarger, the Commander of Air Force Materiel Command. A third individual who I want to recognize is the Director of our Transformational Innovation Office, Dr. Cameron Gorgonpour. So these are the key leaders that are driving this train forward. So how are we going to get there from here and achieve those three goals that I laid out? Well, in order to tell you that, let me go back to about that 1 year ago point when I first became secretary. And it was almost at that very point, because as Ellen pointed out, I came out of industry, so I didn't come to these ideas just like that all at once. I had been building toward this for years. So I believed, and the chief believed right from the get-go, that in order to achieve our goals, we really needed to double down and improve our dialogue with industry so that we could better understand how our processes and our procedures and some of the choices that we make, sometimes inadvertently, contribute to rising costs and the stifling of innovation and the slowing down of process. And by the way, in so doing, we thought maybe industry could learn a thing or two as well. Therefore, we have been meeting in earnest since February of 2014 with industry reps, and I want to again thank those who have helped facilitate this dialogue, to include the AFA, the NDIA, and the AIA in particular. There have been some other industry groups that have helped facilitate as well, so we thank you very much for making that happen for us. And as part of these roundtables, we have been asking what might seem like some basic questions, but they're tough questions, and they're frequently with complex answers. What are the barriers to introducing new technologies? How can we speed this up? How can we improve transparency so that you in industry have better insight earlier on into the process, into our thinking and what we think we need? How do we spend taxpayer dollars more on products and less on bureaucratic processes? So these are some of the questions that we've been asking, and we've gotten what I consider to be excellent feedback from industry. We've been listening hard to them, and they have been listening hard to us. And so today, with your permission, I'd like to kick this up a notch and share some of the progress that we've achieved and some of our next steps. And to do that, I want to tell you that we have arranged a series of our initial initiatives under Bending the Cost Curve into three focus areas. And I call those three focus areas Enhance, Expand, and Improve. Enhance means we need mechanisms to better interact with industry throughout the acquisition life cycle. Expand means we need to increase competition among traditional and non-traditional industry partners to drive down costs and to increase innovation. Improve means we need to carefully examine our own internal processes and develop mechanisms to drive down costs and to speed up our acquisitions. Now, with these three focus areas in mind, let me now cover some of the activities that we are planning. First, under the umbrella of enhancing interactions with industry, we are launching a new Cost Capability Analysis Program, or CCA. Now, here's our thinking. We believe that by gathering data from a range of sources, it should be possible to identify instances where perhaps small changes in capability could have a very large impact on cost. And this, in turn, if we would choose to exercise such an option, could mean that the Air Force could develop much more affordable weapons systems. Now, let me give you a for example. For example, if we had a requirement for a new jet and the jet needed to fly 500 miles per hour, if that was our thinking, if that was our requirement, but if we discovered through this process that we could achieve significant cost savings by amending this requirement to 450 miles per hour, meaning trade off that little bit of capability, then perhaps we could use that knowledge to make trade-offs in how we develop our RFP and our evaluation factors, and maybe we might even choose to modify that requirement. So that's the idea of the CCA, the Cost Capability Analysis. Now you may be thinking, gee, hasn't this approach been done before? And the answer is yes, but. So yes, this approach has been done, and this approach has delivered certain successes. In fact, 2 years ago, we in the Air Force did certain pilots under cost capability analyses. But 2 years ago, there was no formalized process for industry to get on board, to have that crosstalk with us on a regular basis. And so the effort of 2 years ago was somewhat limited as a result. So what bending the cost curve will do is, under our new CCA, we will develop that specific industry engagement process, and we hope ultimately we will reform the way we talk to industry and when we talk to industry about our thinking and about our requirements. And obviously it's designed to do it earlier and more frequently to keep that crosstalk going. Our Bending the Cost Curve team, again, 3 of whom are sitting right here with me today, are developing that specific process now. But today I am excited to tell you that we're going to demonstrate this new capability on 4 programs. And those 4 programs are the TX jet trainer, the long-range standoff weapon, the multi-adaptive potted system, and our follow-on to the space-based infrared system. Now, all of these programs were selected because they represent a range of use cases and segments within our industry. Now, when it comes to TX, we're about 2 years away, we think, from the request for proposal stage, and this new process should allow us to directly engage industry as we develop an understanding of how to best evaluate our objective and our threshold requirements. So think of that as your higher level requirements and your bare minimum requirements. The other programs I mentioned are at different stages in their acquisition process, and we think the fact that they are at different stages will give us a powerful comparative for learning the nuances of how to best engage industry around requirements. Okay, moving on to the expand category. When we talk about expanding competition, I'm kind of interested and excited to tell you about something we call PlugFest Plus. PlugFest Plus. Now, let me back up a moment. A PlugFest is something that exists today. It is a specialized industry event where companies collaborate and demonstrate their existing capabilities in live demonstrations before government customers. OSD's Defense Intelligence Information Enterprise Program has established an entire community of practice around these events, and the events typically occur a couple times each year. Now, these are very well regarded events, but at the moment, PlugFests in their current form have no associated contracting action. So here's how it goes. Industry might attend a PlugFest event. The government customers could well be wowed by the capabilities that they see, but then everybody goes home and there's no easy way to follow up. And when there's no easy way to follow up, sometimes that means there's no follow-up at all. So what happens, and some of the feedback that we got, is that industry, in effect, gets a pat on the back and a gold star, but there's no mechanism to actually take it to the next level, no mechanism for the government to get that technology on board quickly. So under our new, what we call PlugFest Plus approach, we intend to put in place a mechanism whereby a vendor, if we're wowed and if we need that capability, could well walk away with a contract within just a few weeks of the event. And we're going to do this by combining these industry events with an Army acquisition model, which we've learned about, which we think will minimize the barriers for companies to participate and to speed up the ability to follow up. Now, our first PlugFest Plus Industry Day will be January 20th at George Mason University. It's hosted by the Association for Enterprise Information, and we have decided to pick a particular target for this first go-round. We've decided to demonstrate this strategy with the Air Force's Distributed Common Ground System, otherwise known as the DCGS. And this, some of you may know, is a system that produces intelligence information from data collected by a variety of sensors, most especially from the unmanned systems, but from other ISR platforms as well. Now, why did we pick DCGS? Well, it seemed like a good fit for this first industry event, given that it is based on open architecture. And of course, open architecture is key to the whole plugfest concept as well. So if this event proves successful, we intend to take steps to evolve the process to other Air Force applications. I also hope that some of your companies will consider participating in the $2 million prize in our first of this magnitude Air Force Technology Challenge. So Air Force Technology Challenge is our next initiative. Now, the challenge is an Air Force Research Lab-led effort designed to expand competition and facilitate rapid technology development. The $2 million prize is the largest offered by any military service and will go to the competitor with the most innovative solution for developing a mid-sized turbine engine for commercial and military platforms. We chose that particular target because an engine of that type would be especially helpful for us going forward in the world of our remotely piloted aircraft. Now, this technology challenge, as well as the PlugFest Plus, we believe can help us bend the cost curve in two ways. First, both approaches should open the door to non-traditional contractors by lowering the barriers to entry. And second, we hope that they will both spur innovation in very specific areas where we really need the help. Now, let's turn to improving our internal processes. During the first round of bending the cost curve industry engagements, the #1 recommendation that we heard from corporate CIOs was that the Air Force should establish a business analytics capability. Now, many large companies already have such a capability. That is to say, they have a capability to systematically collect certain types of data, analyze it, and from that they can draw some pretty interesting conclusions. That, in effect, is what business analytics is all about. Now, let me be clear, we're not talking about gathering data about which websites people visit or how often you buy a product. That's not the type of data that we're looking for. But the data we're interested in, if we do this right, should help us answer questions such as, will this new database that we're thinking about investing in, will it really make us 30% more efficient? Or if I spend $5 million in this system today, how long will it take to pay back and double my investment, or at least return on my investment? These are the types of questions that we're interested in. We need to get an enterprise view of our information technology spend so that we can understand the trade-offs and make wise future investments. And at the moment, unfortunately, we do not have a solid view of our information technology spend. So therefore, as a result, we are going to stand up an IT business analytics office. In the future, if we want to do a database which would accomplish X, we want to first know before we invest that X has a business case, that there's empirical data to back it up, and that there are metrics that we can measure and make sure that it's delivering on the promise. So what we're really after is a data-driven approach to our IT spending. Similar efforts, as I said, in the private sector have produced results as much as 25% cost savings, and we hope to share at least in some of that success in the future for our U.S. Air Force. Now, here's another thing we intend to improve. Bill LaPlante and General Wolfenbarger recently issued a best practices memorandum which captured 24 best practices which were identified in collaboration with industry through these sessions that Ellen talked about and through some other data that we collected. And we believe that this best practices memo and the implementation of what the memo says will help reduce the time to award for contracts where there is only one known supplier. So remember that ridiculously high 17 months to award the contract when there's only one vendor that can do the work? Well, we are enacting these best practices throughout our acquisition force and beginning to measure the results. We will be measuring results on a first monthly and then eventually a 6-month basis. But ultimately, we are driving to get that 17-month average down to the single digits. So we are expecting to see some good results in that regard. I also want you to know we intend to reduce the overall number of contracts where there is only one known supplier, because competition is always better than sole source. And of course, we want to speed up the competitive side as well. The third way we're improving our internal acquisition processes is through what we call the Matchmaker Project. Now, that's not Match.com, that's the Matchmaker Project. It is different. The Matchmaker Project is collaboratively sharing lessons learned from acquisition successes across industry and across other Air Force portfolios. So in other words, when a company has a success with the Air Force, we want to apply those lessons learned on pending projects with a different division within that same company. And we also want to apply those lessons learned and share that information across our Air Force amongst our acquisition professionals. Now, those of us currently serving in either government or industry, and of course I've done both, so I'll speak from my own experience, I think we can all admit that we don't always collaborate in a company across divisions as perhaps we would all like, or in government across the different parts of government as we would all wish or like. So the idea of the Matchmaker Project is to take that head on. Now, we've already had some good success with our first endeavor, which happened to be with Lockheed Martin and the C-130 and SBIRS teams. Back in October of 2014, Lieutenant General Ellen Polakowski, who is the military deputy to build the plant, invited our C-130J team and the Lockheed Martin Aeronautics team to be part of an information and best practice exchange session. This session also included members of the Air Force, obviously, as well as members from Lockheed Martin Space Systems, which is the division of Lockheed responsible for the SBIRS program. Now, this was Matchmaker in action because it provided an opportunity to share knowledge and best practices across those two parts of that company. And in turn, these best practices, which learned by the Aeronautics Division of Lockheed, inspired new thoughts on improving program management efficiency within the Space Systems Division. And ultimately, it's going to help our Air Force achieve better affordability in both the C-130J and SBIRS programs. Not only is this helping us implement better practices for C-130J, but we're also developing cross-enterprise awareness within the Air Force and within Lockheed. And so to translate that a little bit more clearly, we took lessons learned and best practices from the SBIRS program, which was handled in one division of Lockheed, and we took that show on the road to the other division of Lockheed. We all sat down, we collaborated, and out of all of that, things are changing a bit, and it will drive costs down ultimately for our Air Force. Now, we're currently working to expand Matchmaker to involve more industry partners and more segments of the Air Force portfolio, and to formalize Matchmaker as part of our ongoing acquisition improvement process. So more to follow on this at a later date. Let me wrap this at this point and conclude by saying that bending the cost curve is going to require, as I said at the beginning, for the Air Force to be strategically agile. The concept of strategic agility, we are dead serious about it. We're also very serious, and we need to apply persistent focus and bold leadership, and that is also going to require ongoing dialogue between the Air Force and our industry partners. Bold leadership, I might add, also needs to come from our Congress. I never miss an opportunity to call upon Congress to end sequestration. It will be extremely damaging if we return to it in FY16. And also to make additional changes as they and we develop them and put them forth to improve our acquisition process. Now, all of the ideas I spoke about today, however, are within the chiefs and my purview. And they all came out of these industry dialogues that Ellen referenced earlier on. They can all be implemented within our own authorities, as I said, and so we are marching out to do so. And by the way, there is additional information on all of the Bending the Cost Curve initiatives that I mentioned, which I believe is available in the back of the room. And of course, Janet Wolfenbarger and Bill LaPlante and Cameron Gorgonpour can also provide additional context as well. So stay tuned. This is just the beginning of this effort. You should expect to see more activities emerge in the coming months as we continue to engage with industry and other key stakeholders on this Bending the Cost Curve initiative. Now, I don't pretend that any of this is easy. None of it is easy because it involves change, and change is hard. But I would submit it's worth putting the effort into it, and we need to stick with it because today we are the best Air Force on the planet, and it is up to all of us to keep it that way. So I look forward to building our future together. Thank you very much for your attention this afternoon, and look forward to continuing the dialogue.